All right. All right, everybody. I'm Coach Dennis Stoica with Modern Air Warriors. Welcome back for another podcast. Today, another amazing guest. We have Mike Fraser with us. Mike Fraser, again, special guest. Why special guest? We love to bring on people that are like-minded, that are similar to what we're doing here at Modern Air Warriors, meaning reality-based self-defense, grappling, striking, fitness-related, coaching-related, etc., yoga, things of that nature, doctors about with regards to health and wellness, etc., right? Nutrition, things of that nature. So Mike's background is a law enforcement professional. We're trying to highlight a little bit for 2025, some podcasts for that community. I have 32 plus years in the community myself. I'm going to let Mike have the mic here in a second to talk a little bit about himself as well. But Mike, a very unique person, not just unique because he is a law enforcement professional, to a sheepdog, someone that is out there every day fighting the battle of, kind of good versus evil, if you will, right? Doing something greater than himself for others. Mike has a PhD. So Mike has studied at a amazing level what it's like to be a cop, and specifically work in a program called Gracie Survival Tactics. Gracie Survival Tactics is very well known in the community of law enforcement. I am certified in GST. I've actually helped the Gracies teach GST in the past when it first got rolled out. Kind of want to change names. The father had it used to be called Grapple, I think, when it first came out, a very first name. Then it was rolled out to the military, and then they rolled out to law enforcement. They've changed the names. At this time, you have to be a black belt to teach it, and I believe that's in Mike. You can verify some of that if you know. But and they have a number of instructors that are actually teaching it. When I first kind of changed the name, and I was a certified in it, I actually helped them teach some of them here in Virginia, Pennsylvania, etc. So hey, Mike, thank you for being here. Sheepdog Mindset, amazing person. Can you please just give everyone a little bit of a background on? But I'll dive into the first question, right? So, who is Mike Fraser? What is your purpose? What is your passion? And what are your principles? If you can share a little bit about your law enforcement experience, family, friends, martial arts, fitness experience, and kind of go from there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invitation.
Mhm.
Happy to do it. So I would say I start from the top, I guess. I did 11 years with city police department, patrol, street crimes, ended as a field training officer. That was maybe the most rewarding, but good times. Did a lot there. I'm still active where I work now. It's just a 100% training role. I work for in Florida, we've got like regional training academies. So I do a lot of the advanced training for guys that are in the job, essentially kind of what we're talking about, the defensive tactics kind of stuff. I had like a weird journey, if you will, when it comes to my career. I did like 6 years in the city, and then I left for 2 years. I finished my master's in exercise science, and I actually became or worked into the strength and conditioning world. That was my passion, still is one of my passions, but I left. I ended up working for a company that worked with special operations and professional athletes and the strength coach. I came back to where I lived at the time. I worked as a strength coach for our university with a couple of different teams. And then I kind of just fell back into the law enforcement side of things. So it's a weird thing, but they go together when it comes to this whole mindset. So I like, and honestly, it's not what we're here to talk about is mindset, but leaving the police department, having a new perspective and coming back into it completely changed the way that I thought about training cops in general. So I don't even know what made me do it, but looking back, like taking the break and then coming back, huge thing. So that was an interesting thing I stumbled into. Yeah, martial arts experience. You've probably got decades more than me. I've been doing jujitsu for about 7 years now. Luckily I consistently train 5 to 6 days a week. Um, I love it. It's just like I say, one of those things. It's a tool. I would love to do many others, but we only have so many hours in the day and so many ways we could wrap our knees and hands and Tylenol we could take. Um, but really, that's kind of a snapshot. Obviously, my passions is what we're here for. Training, fitness, all things, physical, really. I think training is probably the biggest one, or teaching, just because as far as, being a cop, you've been a cop. It's fun to arrest people. You get some reward from it, solving crimes. But at the end of the day, training or having a trainee do something successful, that's where you kind of get the good feelings, where you go into check on and somebody talks about, oh, look what so-and-so did yesterday by themselves. And you're like, nice, I taught them that or helped them teach that. And like, that was the cool stuff. So
Mhm.
kind of giving back in that sense, that's really, what I'm passionate about now.
Awesome. Hey, and by the way, I don't think it's like sideways of the conversation to talk about mindset. And I would also argue the years of experience and like 7 years. I'd like to jump in a little bit on that before we even move on to the next question. So, I think mindset's unbelievably important and for a couple purposes, and depending on how you're looking at it. So, as a educator like yourself, or a person who has done study of things like GST, you're looking at the mindset of who's studying, why are they studying. Some of your study looks at how many years they have on the job, right?
Yep.
Right. So how much, and we look at perhaps that in use of force cases among law enforcement. Do they have 6 months on the job? Do they have 10 years on the job? And maybe when we get to a little bit of that too, I'll remind you, if you can remember, right, to kind of point out, um, at what point someone's coming to get training or that use of force. Because I think we see a little bit of a correlation to maybe a little bit more problem with brand new officer. And then we also see a problem with officer with at some point 10 or more years on the job too, right? Getting lackadaisical too. Being a law enforcement trainer, because I'm also a coach, I'm a trainer, right? Very hard to teach law enforcement, and they're kind of not wanting it, because you get some of them like, I carry a gun too, right? Or I have my taser, and this is where again some of this conversation goes. I believe GST is a good program. I've taken it. I've helped teach it. I still would promote it. I still want people to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
But some of the problems I think that we're going to see here is that it's still only a piece. It's great because the Gracies, that's what they do. It is a great program. I'm not going to take anything away from it, but it's still only relatively punching. And it still doesn't necessarily mean that someone's not going to punch back, like the law enforcement. Some of their techniques were specifically taught to. We were just talking about this before we came online, right,
Yeah.
Mike? Might have to throw a punch or two, slap someone in the face to get their hands up, right? So you
Yep.
can take control of their hand, et cetera, right? Elbow and things of that nature. So, or go to another tool like the taser, a baton, or a handgun, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
7 years on, but the thing is this, I would argue, right? Like myself, again, we were talking a little bit before, you don't need to be a black belt to have some skill in, right? Law enforcement doesn't need to be a black belt. The basics done consistently over time become advanced is something that I've said, and something that, Mike, have you heard before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, anything to add, Mike, on mindset or just length of time then, for our listeners?
I would say, kind of like you mentioned, just briefly, the level that you're at. You've got 7 years, you've got 20 years, your belt color. I think for cops, probably the most important thing, and this is for anyone that's wrestled, is for cops, go do something because it teaches you to be uncomfortable in those uncomfortable situations. Like being on, like me, I go look at the ceiling for 5 minutes. I'm on the bottom all the time. And I might not have the perfect, most beautiful triangle, but I'm used to, if someone on the street jumps on top of me,
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm comfortable. I know I'm good here. I know when I need to, put the gas down. But for cops, it's just, it's not, we don't want them to all have perfect flying triangles, but we want them to be get taken down by that high school wrestler who's drunk, and you're like, oh, I've been here before. Not a big deal.
And Mike, look, before we go on that question too here, right, and kind of move the conversation forward a little bit, I love it though, because we're all different body shapes and sizes, right? I work with gals who are 5'2" and a little over 100 pounds, maybe 140 with their kit, you know what I mean? Everything that they're wearing. That's a small person, right? And I just the other day, I mean, I arrested a guy who's 6'5", 270, former IDF guy, right? 10 years. So lots of experience in martial arts himself if things go bad, right? Person transporting and doing stuff with handguns and weapons in his own company that deals with stuff like that within the United States, right? So armed individual too, right? So bottom line is, it doesn't matter whether you're 5'2" or you're a cop. That we have a lot of big guys that are too, like, 6'4", 6'5", and approaching 270 themselves, right? Basics done well over time, I'll come back to, right? No one needs to be a black belt, and there's different body shapes and sizes, something that 5'2" guy or gal would do. We got some guys on the job that are smaller too, right? I mean, it just we all come in different shapes and sizes, and we have our kits and stuff that prevent us from doing some things, right? We'll get more into that. So hey, all right. Tell us about your doctoral dissertation, law enforcement and jiu-jitsu training, examining confidence, stress management, skill proficiency. Amazing. I don't know if I'll start off, right? If someone wants to follow up from this conversation, is that published at the school? Is that available for someone if they wanted to actually dive into it a little bit more in our conversation today?
Yeah, it's on whatever they use called like ProQuest, but in reality, give them my email. I'll send it to them for free. It's behind a paywall, but PDFs are free from me.
Awesome. Good to go. So tell us about it. I mean, law enforcement officers often use force to defend themselves, right? And others to affect arrest. Physical skill is chronologically undertained despite the complexity and aggression needed while using force. Your dissertation, in practice, action, research, study, examine the extent to which completing a 5-day action-oriented adult learning training course affected law enforcement officers with regards to self efficacy, confidence, stress management when using force, interactions, resisting, or even violent subjects. I can go on a little bit. There 136 law enforcement officers attended a course during 2023 and 2024. And you used kind of this as an experiment, if you will, right? Designed to determine the effectiveness of Gracie survival tactics, right? On those things, the self-efficacy, confidence, stress management. So without going too much more in detail, reading from it a little bit, was kind of sum it up for everybody.
Yeah. So it was an action-oriented research project. What that means is we were tasked with finding something in a field like law enforcement and trying to make a change, and essentially using GST to make that change. So you hit on it. So kind of what we did is we took those GST classes are 5 days long. Essentially we were interested, hey, do cops before the GST, how do they feel about their own personal ability to use force, make arrests? And we're curious, does GST help it? Does it hurt it? Is it neutral? So essentially we just asked them beforehand, let them go through the GST, and then afterwards we just asked them again. So again, they're kind of their own control, meaning that's one of the limitations is it's just how do they feel? So it's really subjective. But yeah, the idea was they attend the class. Hopefully our hypothesis was that by attending the GST class, they're more they feel more confident, more able to control themselves, their stress when put in use of force situations by attending the GST. And again, like I say, the research findings did support that, that essentially their confidence in not only their skills, like their ability to do a takedown or to grapple essentially, but their overall self-efficacy of just, how do you feel your ability to use force, right? Because everybody, says if I have to I would prefer a black belt come deal with my son if he was being, rambunctious. And yeah, I mean, that's fine. But hopefully every cop the first day on has that confidence of like, yes, I know what I'm doing, because we don't want the cops to show up that don't feel confident.
So this is huge, right? So we currently have 14 people on the street right now in as trainees right now in my agency.
Okay.
So we have a lot of FTOs, and when I say we just had 14, about every twice a year, that's about a number that we're throwing out approximately for the last several years with turnover, growth of the agency, growth of population, right? And it comes back, Mike, to mindset still, right? So confidence is mindset. And that is one of the things that a brand new officer, right, or brand new officer or sheriff, right, anyone in law enforcement is needing when they come to the street. The academy can do a great job with footwork, but at the end of the day, the job is different when you're getting some what I refer to as LGD, leadership guidance and direction, from your field training officer, right?
Right.
And learning how to take the book work and now do the job. Two very different things. Awesome that we're looking at self-efficacy, and there's other pieces. Anything else to add before I go into a follow-up question with regards to that?
No, that was the general outline.
Good to go. So question seeking answer to the study, right? So how did the completion then of the program, action oriented, adult learner focused defensive tactics course, right, affect the law enforcement self-efficacy, the confidence, and the stress management then? So looking at the program, confidence being a piece of that, talk about the program itself. How does it end up? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So luckily, I think the hypothesis that we all kind of thought was the answer ended up being true, right? So it was very statistically significant, meaning the majority of people all kind of agreed, and they finished the course, and they rated themselves higher at the end than they did in the beginning, right? That was kind of what we were going for. A couple things that stood out were a lot of the individuals said they overrated themselves in the beginning, meaning when we asked them on the first day, hey, how do you feel right now? Do you feel you've never done any grappling, you've never done anything before? Do you feel like you're ready to go? You're 10-8 to take someone to jail? And most of them overrated themselves like 6, 7, 8. And they go through the class and they get exposed to these fight simulations with you're familiar with, and the different body styles of their training partners. And then after the class, we asked them, hey, you improved, but what about in the beginning? And a lot of them said, I kind of way overdid it. I thought I was, more of a top dog than I really was. And the first time somebody got on top of me and I couldn't get out, I was like, oh, maybe it brought it to reality, right? So it kind of gave them that little bit of a reality check, which I think is good. And then kind of the stress management part of it, it was just a general question, but some hypothesis or extra research that we could do on that is, how stress management works. We get that stimulus response. So the idea is that, the first time they've had their legs wrapped up and taken down in GST, they were able to manage, kind of like we talked about, being uncomfortable. First time someone grabs your legs and takes you down, your first instinct's not like, where's my gun? Grab my gun and shoot them. Like, oh no, it's a stimulus, it's new. And then, overall, it was a little bit, they kind of heightened that stress response, because we know the first time you see a gun on the street, you need to have a heck of a response, but your response can't be so 100% that your first instinct is just point, shoot, and ask questions later. There could be other things to think about, right? Backdrop, all these different things. So, in reality, yes, their self-efficacy, confidence, stress management, all increased. And obviously this was just a little, a snippet of the data. I've got a bunch of other questions we asked, but this is just what we chose for the research. So future publications we've got have other interesting stuff, but yeah, I think overall the study could say that attending GST definitely improved, the officer's ability to use force and make arrests.
So I don't want to take too much and just kind of throw up from reading the paper as well, but the self-efficacy is a person's belief to complete a task for a specific goal, right? So it's the practice, right? It's getting the work done, getting the repetitions in, kind of what you said, being taken down for the first time, practicing for the 5 days, and then moving to the competence, right? Because the person then feels self-assured that what they're learning can work. Maybe it's different for them. They haven't been in that situation before, right? They find the uncomfortableness, right? The comfortableness in the uncomfortableness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that leads to stress management, right? Being able to be cool under pressure, being able to actually perform, having the ability to override physiological stress responses that we have going on as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ultimately. Okay, awesome. So this study, 136 Leos, 14 female participants, 122 male participants. Not a bad number, by the way. About close to 10%, right?
Yeah.
Close to 10%. Law enforcement is trying to get that higher throughout the United States in our different agencies. There are those that are pushing that, which is great. At the end of the day, we'd like to be a percentage of our population if we can. Average age of female participants was 33 years of age. The males were 37. Female participants weighed an average of 170 pounds, and male participants weighed an average of 209 pounds. I have that right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. The average height for females was 65 inches. The average height for males was 70 inches. So kind of break down a little bit on body shape, body size, if you will. Average time for Leos. The females 10.5 years, and the males 10.7. You surveyed 19 separate GST courses. So this just wasn't a one-time one course for 5 days, correct?
Correct. Yep. It was
awesome. It happened in 2023, 2024. In each session had a variety of agencies, different jurisdictions. And that included a makeup of local municipalities, which was about close to 46%, sheriff's offices at 33%. So at the end of the day, we're all Leos. Job is pretty much the same. There's just some differences between cops and Leos for those that are not familiar with it.
Yep.
Anything else to add on the study demographics that you thought was important, Mike, that may be helpful for listeners?
The only thing would be that the vast majority, like 70%, looking at my notes here, were likely patrol officers, meaning they interacted with the public. I would have personally liked to seen a little bit, more of like an admin, higher level admin, and see what their responses were. But then again, GST is normally going to be hopefully your patrol officers that need the training. That was it. Just kind of how it skewed to the frontline officers.
Yeah. I actually had that in my notes, but almost 71% are those working directly with public interaction, right? That have direct public interaction, and that's always great. You and me, right? Those that are the workers, the trainers, et cetera, or maybe even those that are putting the programs on. We want to make sure that management understands that what the program is, how well it works, get their support. There are those in our agency that we're large enough. We have like 700 people strong, right? So there's discussions with our agency to actually have permanent classes. Like I teach my dojo, right?
Cool.
My own gym. That we're talking about having like regular classes a few days a week with persons that are certified, so the agency can come in and train, right? So number one, you're saving money and we get PT time, et cetera, right? I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that involves by bringing executive management in, right? To sell the program and believe in the program. So I don't know if you know anybody else is doing anything like that, and it's pretty progressive.
I'll have to, you say, to fact check me. I know a couple years ago, or maybe last year, there was a proposition that the Georgia legislature was going to put money aside and essentially pay. If an officer in Georgia found a certified training center, the legislature would pay for their tuition to attend it. Awesome. I'm not sure if that bill was passed, but that was I remember hearing that, and Georgia was the first state, and I was like, wow, that's kind of novel. No other state has offered to do that.
Awesome. Let's move on. My next piece here is responses. So analysis of your research. You kind of hit this already a little bit. You can't help it by just kind of talking about it, right? But participants reported that they could better defend themselves, right? During a violent encounter is the take at the end of the day, right? They had better control of a standing opponent, could take the opponent to the ground, could take control of the other opponent. By completing the 5-day course. So
Yep.
efficacy they have, you have, because they're doing it, it works. It helps them with their confidence, being able to do it right, and then that stress management as well, that we're able to do it. EdD, let me see here. I think I had one more note I wanted to mention. By being pinned down by a larger opponent. Also, right? Because you mentioned that as well, putting someone on their back, and we kind of talked about that too. You said you love to spend, like, your jujitsu time, love to spend time on back.
Unintentional, but yeah.
It's well, some people train them that way on purpose, right? Some instructors make that. It's positional sparring. We're gonna start from a position where you're being mounted today.
Yep.
And the Gracie's, I do that within my dojo at times, right? I can't imagine most don't, and they do that at Gracie's University, Gracie Survival Tactics as well. Anything to add with regard to the response of the dissertation, the study?
No, we talked about the response. It's really just it's significant results, and essentially all that says is, hey, we're on to something, so we need to keep doing more research.
Yeah, awesome. So there was an orthopedic surgeon. You're going to have to help me with the name, perhaps. Gaetano J.
Nice try.
Scuderi.
Yeah,
is it pretty close? Okay. It's part of your study as well. So he looks at GST versus traditional methods, right? Traditional methods being other hands-on, pepper spray, baton, taser, non-lethal tools, ultimately handguns and long guns as well. Are you able to share a little bit of just kind of summarize his comments that were in your dissertation?
Yeah, so this was just from a medical review that GST did, probably kind of in the beginning. It's on their website as one of their medical and legal reviews. And yeah, he reviews their 5-day program that we're talking about here, and kind of just echoes what we've been talking about. His big taking points are the GST system is safe. It has safety in mind for the officer and the suspect. It's joint manipulation. It's not using a baton and hitting joints or anything to cause damage. So essentially the medical review was that, yes, the things that they're teaching are sound. They're not going to cause undue harm for no reason unless done inappropriately. So essentially it was GST's way of taking a medical viewpoint and saying, yes, what we're teaching is sound, and to kind of go with what we're going. We talked about beforehand, but one thing the doctor mentioned was GST's lack of a striking component was safe, for the suspect. And an officer, it is, but you can't have a 100% non-striking curriculum and think you're going to get the job done, because we still strike to get the job done.
Yeah. And then this leads us to our last piece really for today too. We're getting very close on time as well, but this is where I believe GST is limited still, and significantly, I'll say it fails. And your study was extremely limited and doesn't address necessarily some of those things, right?
Yep.
And you even say there's more room for study. But when I first took the GST course, I took it in gym clothes. Okay. That's what they were doing a long time ago. So you're basically no gi. All right. Law enforcement has significantly changed in 30 plus years that I've been in. So we did not have kits that we wore on our vests. Everything was pretty much worn on your belt a long time ago, which means you could carry less. Law enforcement has changed where we have additional tools like the taser, like the body camera, like a tourniquet. So like a first aid kit.
Yeah.
Our cops are wearing all those things. So when I talk to, and I won't necessarily pinpoint, or I'll just say a person or two that is taught or teaching GST nationwide, and I see video or pictures of them wearing a bulletproof vest and like a handgun and a handcuff, it is unrealistic to think that is what the average officer is wearing these days. I wear almost 30 pounds on my body every day with my vest, my plates, my handgun, my ammo for my long gun and my pistol, my radio, right? I don't even carry a taser. I'm old school. I'm like, don't need it, don't want it, don't need it, don't want it, right? And we're going to call sometimes, right, with non-lethal. So someone has a long gun of a beanbag or something else with them, a 40. And so we just saw a video from the Gracies recently where the guy had his taser and didn't reholster it, put it on the ground. So that leads me to the danger of your own weapon being taken away.
Yep.
I don't think that a course dress is enough of your handgun, a backup handgun, even, right? So someone might have their long gun and then their pistol, or they have the pistol and then they have a backup, right? Um, I, Mike, how many officers carry a knife?
Hopefully all of them.
Hopefully all of them. So the program doesn't address that I also have a knife on me. I do have a couple friends that are in this world that are working with being armed. Whether you're a civilian, the programs really are for civilians, so it's like for concealed carry.
Okay.
And they're doing BJJ, if you will, for the most part. It's not just all BJJ, it's striking stuff too, but it's combatives, right? We'll just say it's combatives, where you have your own weapon on you as well, and you're having to keep it safe while you're in the fight too, or the person trying to grab it. So I think it's limited there. What do you think so far? What I've said too, kits, danger of your own weapons being taken away, and things of that nature so far.
Yeah, I mean, size is always going to be a big one, right? GST addresses good techniques. It's a good tool. 110-pound girl with the best jiu-jitsu, whatever skills versus a 300-pound guy who's trained. Good luck. But again, yeah, I think everything you've hit on is true. It's realistic. I think GST it needs to be looked at as a tool, right? It's a good tool.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So I think it's just how we use it, how we pitch it. It's not going to be the end all be all, but I think it's again another tool in the toolbox to go from where we're currently at, which is zero training or zero mandatory retraining. It's a good scapegoat for agencies to just say my state doesn't require us, so we're not going to do it. Like doesn't mean you don't have to, but GST is a good tool to get. Really, if we could have every officer trained,
go through the program.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We'd be light years ahead of where we're currently at. Now we still need to keep going.
So I'm gonna hit a couple of other things here real quick, and I'm gonna come back to the training piece of it. All right. So I have down here too with regards to limitations, failures. Right. Size does matter. Look, it does. There's different weight classes now in the UFC. Right. Of someone who's 5'2", wearing your kit, are not going to get their legs around. They have to adjust their jujitsu, their combativeness, right? Their self-defense for their own body. This is where I think, look, yoga, very much an individual thing, but people take yoga classes. At the end of the day, I will say too, BJJ, an individual thing. Yeah. Part of some BJJ at times is a curriculum, and it's forcing everyone to do the same thing. This is why private lessons are amazing. So great to go to a class and learn what everyone else is doing today, but is it the best technique for me? Yep. Is it the best technique as a cop, right? To do as well? How do I follow up? There's knife attacks, I believe, weapons attacks, large crowds, dealing with crowd control is not within GST as well, like civil defense, dealing with crowds. That's a whole different ballgame when you start to work at the Capitol for large events. Either we're not taking people to the ground doing stuff too necessarily. Other de-escalation programs that are out there too. We have crisis intervention training. That's the verbalness, right? Yep. I believe is also important to add into GST. Like you have the physical and you have a verbal de-escalation as well. And then there's just other things, handcuffing, firearms, legal training, first aid, emergency medical, TACCC, right? As well for folks. So a lot the law enforcement guy or gal has to do. Like you said too, it is a piece at the end of the day. We need to understand our policies too, right? Of the department, the law and the legal authorities that we have, which can change maybe from department to department or state as well. So it's a great base program for people to start. But at the end of the day, there's no state law requiring us to risk ourselves not using a higher level of force, right? At the end of the day, too. And so, and I maybe they've changed a little bit, but I don't think they're having that discussion enough in the GST world, in jiu-jitsu, in training enough, right? What, Mike? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what was that Supreme Court from 18 or 19, that ruling that you just mentioned? It's kind of one of those like brain busters where, you know, it was from Marjorie Stoneman. That's what it was. You know, saying that you didn't have to go in and help. It's like, okay, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, you know, how many things are you asked to do as a cop at a call? It could be 30 different, you have to be 30 different specialists at one time. And I don't think there's one, you know, training program that's going to encapsulate all that. Like you just said, you know, GST, using your first aid kit, you know, all this kinds of stuff. And it's a daunting task, but I mean, honestly, we have all the tools to create excellent officers. But I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, you start at the bottom, which is not your frontline officers. The bottom is really legislature, right? If Florida, for example, where I work, if the Florida legislature came on board and they were like, we hear you, we're going to say you have to do yearly or quarterly mandatory training, we're going to make it an initiative, then you're going to get better training because you're going to be forced to.
And that comes back down to the piece I said I would come back to too, right? So if you're on an agency for 20 plus years, so if you make it a career, whether that's military, law enforcement, federal, state, local, I see no reason why you cannot. We don't get enough training. That's a fact. But if we complete, if you in GST, you can pick 10 techniques, right?
Yeah.
And repeat those 10 techniques, 20 techniques. Figure out what works for you, and you'll have a small basic number of techniques, right? That you can learn and become more proficient at over your career. So we don't need to make people black belt again, right? But we need to be giving them the tools. The last thing I'll kind of say too is, right, ongoing, holistic, well-rounded defensive tactics training program, right? That's reality-based, scenario-based, with simunitions, because again, the Gracies aren't incorporating that in their GST as well, with a variety of shoot and no shoot situations, right? Where we're incorporating officers down, providing emergency medical, working with EMS, fire, things of that nature, right? And it comes back to Mike too. You said too, there's no one course necessarily that's doing it, but in our training, we can kind of incorporate as many of those things as possible. Like I just kind of said too, make it reality-based training. So
yeah, cool. No, reality-based, and you know, even if you hear the word simunition, people think y'all are going to go shoot each other, but really all it is like you said, you're going to revert to the lowest level of your training. So if in training we could hype you up and get you comfortable with the sound of gunfire, the smell of gunpowder, and then while you're all hyped up, you could successfully knee on belly somebody until they roll over and they comply. And we do that every 2 weeks, and then it happens in the street, and you
automatic
that encounter, and you look around and you're like, oh, that was good. You know,
awesome.
You're not it's awesome. Training, you know, that's all it is. It's reps.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, we're at a time. We're actually over. I always take my podcast a little bit over. So apologize for you and everyone watching, but always great conversation. Try to make them 30-minute coffee talks, not 3-hour podcasts. So something that is edible for people to digest. Great conversation. If they want to learn more, Mike, please let them know. You said you're going to give your email out and where they can get the actual study if they want more.
Yeah. I don't know if I could chat it or you could post it, but it's just.
I can post it. I can post it when I post the videos.
Yeah, I'll just send you that, and just shoot me an email. I'll give it to you for free. There's no point of that, and anything else we send out. But yeah, email's the best.
Awesome. All right, Mike, I thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate you. If you ever do anything additional with it, add to the study. I'd love to have you back on as well to share with people and just to kind of see where we're at. Much appreciated. But if I ask you to hold on a minute while I exit and tell everyone, hey, you know the drill. Until next time, train hard, train smart, train safe, train real, and train for life. See you in the next one, everybody. Take care.